Hello my knife-loving friends. I am bringing you another video here on a Walter Randolph Wyvern, and I'm really excited to share this with you. So starting with some story time, I actually purchased this knife when I received this knife from purchase. So this is my Jeremy Marsh Rockstar, and I was basically buying the Jeremy Marsh, and the dealer I had bought it through had sent this knife and one other along with it for me to check out. And so I had never handled a Walter Randolph flipper. Thumb studs are in right now. So the last time I had gone to some shows, I think I had the opportunity to handle some thumb studs, but I didn't have the opportunity to handle any flippers. However, it was recommended to me based on its action that this knife was something I should check out. So I went ahead and bought it after receiving it because the action is simply stunning. So I think we're going to take you on a look around the knife first, and then we'll do some comparisons and talk about it a little bit. So starting with what you can see here, this is a Zircuti pivot with what I assume is a custom pivot made by Walter. I don't think he uses any CNC or anything like that either. This reminds me of like maybe Kirby Lambert style pivots, or I see a few other on a few other knives this like tri style pivot. So I'm not sure if he makes these or if they were made for him, but nonetheless, it's an attractive pivot. Kind of matches the bead blasted titanium frames on this. So nice, simple, clean. It's got a couple of Torx hardware screws that run through the back, and they just screw right into the frame on that. And then you can see the external, or I guess it's technically an internal pivot, but it's got these not pivot, sorry about that, blade stop. It's internal, is that it's internal to the handles, but it also has these cutouts on them so you can see it, which is kind of unique styling, as opposed to maybe this knife. This is a Jerry McGinnis, Michael Birch collaboration. You don't see anything relating to the blade stops. It's all internal to the blade. Or that could be opposed to something like this, where you can see it. It's kind of small up in the corner, but this design language is very distinct. How it's kind of up and in your face on that. So that's something that's interesting to me. So continuing around here, we can see this nice floating Zircuti backspacer. I do have a few other knives with floating backspacers, and I like them. They're probably some of my favorite types of backspacers. It's also kind of cool when they're perfectly flush and well finished. We'll break out the Gary McGinnis again, like this one. This is well finished and not floating, but still an attractive look. Whereas this one is, it's floating. You can see through there. Hopefully you can see through there. It's well done. It kind of pops out of the handle pretty much all the way around consistently. So it's not perfectly flush, but it kind of adds a little bit of texture to an otherwise, pretty smooth knife. As you can see, it kind of follows around the contours of the handles. It's well done. It's well finished. It looks nice. Take a look at Walter's blade centering here. It looks a little off to me. It's probably slightly off towards the show side there, but ever since I've owned the knife, it hasn't walked on me or anything. So we'll put this knife away again. Keep it from being distracting here. Continuing around, you can see this beautiful Zircuti pocket clip. It's kind of got this like Begg style standoffs. That's what I associate it with, like the Todd Begg Bodega, how it stood on those standoffs, but it doesn't have that. It doesn't have the ball bearing in the clip. It's kind of got its more traditional style. It's well sculpted. It's well made. It looks nice. It kind of reminds me of like my Lee Williams Adventurer clip, where it's kind of starts towards the base a little bit wider, and then it narrows up towards the middle, and then it gets a little wider towards the base. I find it to be an effective shape. I think it goes in and out of the pocket pretty easily. Speaking of going in and out of the pocket, it's got this like accordion style cutout in the frame. This is the lock bar relief cut. So when you're bending the lock bar, in order to get it to sit against the blade naturally, you have to give it some relief there. And he's using this accordion style on this particular example. And I tend to prefer this over the like cutout style. We'll pull out the Jeremy Marsh again for that. So it's versus just like a big single cutout. I think this is like the old school style of making it. And although it's effective, I find that as it goes in and out of the pocket, your pocket can sometimes catch on it, especially if you have like pretty sharp edges. This one's pretty rounded and the clip kind of sits above the channel. So I don't think you really notice this particular knife. But there are some knives that, as I'm going through and putting it in and out of the pocket, I feel like it gets snagged on that. That doesn't generally happen with these because there's not enough room for your pocket to really wedge itself in here. I like that. These edges are a little grabby to pockets, but I still prefer this style. So then we'll kind of finish you off here towards the top of the knife again with the pivot there. So speaking of the action, this thing fires good. The detent on this thing is great. I've never handled like a Rexford, which is I think probably the gold standard in flippers, but it's not like super drop shetty free, which maybe I could compare to like my TJ Fisher Lash, which I love this knife. This is a great knife, but like it doesn't take much to send that blade home. And I like this drop shetty free bearings feel. It seems like a lot of high quality knives can do this too, but some people don't like that. So this knife, it's much slower. Like this blade, like you can get it to drop in, but it's not going to be drop shut like the TJ Fisher is. It kind of reminds me of like my Lee Williams, although the Lee Williams also drops pretty well. The action on this thing is predictable in that it always opens up, and that's what I like about a flipper. Pretty much no matter how you choose to deploy this, whether you want to kind of light switch it, which you can kind of get your hand in the front there and you can light switch it, or if you want to give it the push button, you can do that. It always deploys, and I like that a lot. This flipper is one of the nicest flippers that I've handled in terms of action. I'm not sure if all of Walter's work is like this, but if it is and you decide to pick up a Walter Randolph, I think you'll be in good shape action-wise. Continuing on, I'm not sure what Walter's preferred blade steel is. This particular one has a satin finish with his maker's mark there, Walter Randolph. Continue spinning you around here. This is his Wyvern model again, so that's kind of what his blade shape is. And it's got this nice cutting edge, nice belly. I also like this in terms of like sharpening. I have a wicked edge, so I could probably touch this up if I wanted to. I haven't had to do that yet. Comes to a nice fine point, so you can get in there and do some fine work if you needed to. Nice little, I don't know, what is this, a clip point maybe? And it's got this swedge here that runs down the top there. It's an attractive blade. It kind of matches the simplicity in that like there's not a ton going on. It's not like some big crazy multi-grind kind of a thing like maybe the Dalibor Oberon. Like this is another pretty knife with a unique blade style on it. But it's simple, and I think that matches the dress of this particular knife really well. I'm sure you can get this in dress materials too, and maybe you could get some like Damascus or Sandmai or something that hides the shape a little bit but really dresses it up more. But I think this is nice. It looks attractive to me. Continuing kind of around, you can see you've got this like maybe miniature choil. I don't see myself cutting in this position. There's plenty of handle on this knife. I have like medium, large hands, and you can have some big paws, and you're gonna be just fine. Another thing to note is that it does have this finger kind of choil here in the handle, and then your other fingers wrap around on it. My pinky does land on this little bump, but it doesn't bother me at all. Like, it's not sharp, it's not super obtrusive. I can get a good, comfortable grip on there, and I'm not even thinking about it. Which is opposed to some knives where like the grooves are super pronounced and maybe it doesn't fit your hand. You can see my pinky lands right on it, and I don't notice any problems with holding this knife. So I think you can get away with just about any size hands, and you'd be okay. Continuing on about the handle, it's nicely contoured and rounded, and it's got beautiful edges. Finish work is all good. It's easy to hold. There's no hot spots. The clip doesn't bother you when it's in your hand. I don't know why you choose to reverse. Oh, sorry for bumping the camera there. I don't know why you choose to reverse grip this. You can if you want. There's no jimping back here, so grip is not the best. There is a little bit of jimping here on the blade, and it's useful. It's there. It's not like the most aggressive jimping I've ever held. Like, it's not super sharp, so I guess that's nice. This is probably not a super hard use knife, so this minimalist kind of jimping is probably what I would have preferred, and it works for what you need it for. If your hands are a little slippery, you got a little bit of extra bite there, but it's nothing crazy. But yeah, the action on this thing is top notch. Walter's got his detent. He's got that detent tuning down because this thing fires great. I did put a little tiny drop of nano oil, which is kind of my preferred lubricant, in there just to help free it up a little bit. And that turned this knife into an absolute rocket. It shot well before, but this thing now is just, this thing is fast. It's probably one of my favorite actions, again, compared to some of these knives here. So we'll put these out of the way, but yeah, if your Walter Randolph is firing anything like mine is, you'll be happy with it. You'll be really happy with it. The flipper tab, like I had mentioned, you can push button it, or you can light switch it. It's probably slightly in a push button configuration, kind of based on the fact that it's like squared off at the top. But you can do either with it. It's pretty comfortable. It's maybe a little bit sharp. The jimping up here is like, it's kind of aggressive, but not unbearable, but I guess that's something to point out. And that's the same with like the lock bar. It does have a nice cutout there, but like that particular edge, if you aren't flipping knives or not using knives a lot, I could see how that edge might bother your hands a little bit, especially when you first get the knife. For me, it's I have got knife fingers from fidgeting with all of my knives, so that doesn't super bother me, but maybe something to note. One other thing I would have preferred on this knife is probably if there was hardware faces on all sides. So like I have some knives like we'll pull out the Draco here. It's got hardware on every component. I know this doesn't have a backspacer, but it's got hardware here, hardware head here, hardware head here, and kind of matching hardware head here. I prefer this like more symmetrical look as opposed to this asymmetrical look. I think some people prefer this because it's a little bit easier to take apart, but I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm not taking apart my Walter Randolph. If it needs something, it's probably getting sent to Walter. And the other thing is that the previous owner, whoever had this before me, probably tried to use an Allen key, and they chewed up these Torx bits a little bit. So they're probably still serviceable, but I think I'm going to try and send this to Walter at some point to replace that hardware. Not because this knife is not brand new. Like, you can see if you look closely, maybe you can see. I'm not a liar, I promise. It does have a little bit of marks on the blade. It's not 100% perfect. It's got some marks on the titanium, and I want this to be kind of a user knife for me, so it doesn't bother me that there's some marks on it, but like tearing up the hardware and getting some light marks on the titanium and blade as I use it are kind of different things for me. So yeah, I'll probably try and get these replaced at some point if that's easy. The general silhouette of this knife is really pretty to me. It's kind of that like simple modern look. It kind of reminds me of a Sabenza in that like there's not a lot of frills going on with it, but it's not boring. Like, it's got little pops of color, and although this color, it kind of looks a little washed out due to the lighting, it's very appropriate. It's very tasteful. It adds just enough to the knife to make it interesting to look at without being overwhelming. And I like that. It reminds me of a Sebenza, like I said, with that bead blasted handle. And I think that the cool part about that is that the materials don't hide the craftsmanship. And Walter's work, you don't need to hide the craftsmanship. You don't need to hide the action. Like this knife with these more less dress material focused highlights Walter's work really well. And it doesn't need full Zircuti scales. It doesn't need to be full dress with bolsters and a liner lock. He does really awesome work with that too, don't get me wrong. But the fact that this one is simple, it highlights how good he is and that he doesn't need that stuff to have a really awesome knife. I will do some size comparisons to the closest production knives I have. I don't have a ton of production knives, but I usually do my Benchmade 940. Wyvern is definitely bigger, blade bigger, handle bigger. It's a lot taller too. Thickness wise on this guy, it's pretty stout. Benchmade is no slouch with its kind of Tonto-y, Tonto style blade. It's got a nice thick tip there, but the Walther on this guy is much bigger. It's got thicker blade stock. Its handle's a little thicker. It's a lot beefier of a knife. And then maybe a slightly closer comparison would be to my Microtech DOC. This guy's a user, so it's got wear on it, but we'll try to get pivot to pivot here. The handle on the DOC is a bit bigger. It's definitely longer. The camera angle, it doesn't help it, but it's definitely longer. The blade, the whole blade's maybe close to it in length, but the cutting edge is not nearly as long because it's got a finger choil and a sharpening choil here, whereas the Randolph just has the small finger choil. Maybe we'll call it a finger choil. So yeah, the other dimension, like I had pointed out, was kind of its height, and the Walther with the flipper tab is definitely not a small footprint, but the only thing I carry in my knife pocket is my knife, so the having a bigger knife doesn't really bother me. But if you keep your keys or your phone in your knife pocket, you should stop that first off. But if you do, maybe that would be a problem for you. Walter makes smaller models, so maybe you could look into one of his mini Wyverns or mini Persians or other knife. But yeah, I think that's most of what I wanted to cover with this. So I like this knife. It was sent to me just to look at, and it couldn't leave, unfortunately, and I'm really happy to have it. It's a great flipper. This particular one is dressed in a cool fashion. It's well made. I like Walter's work. So we'll give you another look around here, and then we will actuate it a few more times, and then I will get you out of here. I'm not sure what blade steel Walter chooses to use. Maybe he's got a preference. This is probably one of his older models because his pivot style has adapted to be kind of it's changed over the years, and I think this is one of his older styles. But nonetheless, if he was making knives this good back then, I can't imagine what he's doing today.